Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, August 31st. We welcome you here, and I think, Mike, you'll take the roll, right?
Thank you. Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Chapman.
Present.
Councilmember McCall. Here. Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen. Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Both Al Sorensen and Pat Wright notified us they could not be here this evening. Could we have a motion to excuse them?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Under announcements tonight, once I adjust the mask, you can keep your summer workout routine going this fall with the annual membership to the Pullman Aquatic and Fitness Center. You can save 20% off the annual membership for seniors, youth, and families throughout the month of September. For more information, visit pullmanwa.gov. Today is International Overdose Awareness Day for 2021. North America continues to experience the highest drug-related mortality rate in the world, accounting for 25% of drug-related deaths worldwide. The Center for Disease Control estimates over 90,000 overdose deaths in the U.S. in 2020. In an effort to keep unused and unwanted prescription medications from being abused or assessed by children, a safe and secure prescription drug box is available 24/7 at the Pullman Police Department lobby, which is right there on Kamiakin Street. For more information, you can visit pullmanwa.gov. And with that, Nathan, I think you have some comments to make tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank Officer Gordon and the police department, Pullman Police Department. Both Eileen and I had the opportunity to go through a small taste of the training that they go through and the situations that they face. It greatly helps, I know myself, and I believe all council members to understand what it's like on the other side of the badge. And just wanted to thank Pullman Police Department for that opportunity. I know Fire Department has done similar things, and Councilmember Sorensen, Councilmember Chapman have both been a part of that. Helps us to understand as we make decisions up here what just a small amount our departments go through, staff, leaders, so on. So thank you, Chief. Thank you, Officer Gordon. Very, very interesting and enlightening experience, that's for sure.
You may have seen the recent Seattle Times article, 6 Reasons to Go on a Family Road Trip to Pullman, in addition to football. As the college football season kicks off this coming Saturday, it's a nice reminder to all members of the community that there are a number of fun activities in Pullman to offer: local shops, numerous trails, nostalgic restaurants, incredible scenery, and more. I had a nice chance to talk with Jia Ying, who wrote the article. She actually grew up here in Pullman, went to school here, and when she called me, she says, I'm bringing back the kids. They want to see where I grew up. And then she wrote the article. It came out in the Seattle Times. She's a former resident and, again, a former student here. On behalf of the city, we want to extend our sympathy to our colleagues and friends in Colfax for the death of Jim Krause, who died Saturday in an apparent heart attack while pulling hose on his 4th volunteer run of the day at the Green Hollow Road wildfire. Krause served as chief of Colfax from 1972 to 2010, volunteer for 52 years. In cases like this, mutual aid always comes in there, but also just neighborly compassion. And Chief Mike Heston sent Assistant Chief Ryan Schornhorst to help with the calls and the planning. An ambulance with our paramedics also went over to there and handled medical responses. As soon as they arrived, they actually went out on a call. Pullman Fire Marshal Chris Waring and Assistant Fire Marshal Tony Nutman, along with Darren Jones from the WSU Fire Services, handled the fire investigation. I went over Saturday afternoon and through the evening as public information officer to help Colfax and put out the news release and work with the media. City of Moscow sent an engine to help with responses as well. And that's in addition to District 11 and District 12. Current Colfax chief is Michael Chapman, who served as reserve firefighter here in Pullman for over 20 years. Assistant chief is Craig Corbell, who was chief before Michael. Services for Chief Krause, who will be in the next couple of weeks in Bruning Funeral Home in Colfax, is in charge of the arrangement. Those are the announcements tonight, and with that, we now start our presentations. And our first one will be from Gary Jenkins, our police chief, on fireworks enforcement report for 2011. Gary?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This year, from the time period of June 28th to July 6th, the police department responded to 11 fireworks-related calls. This is the lowest number of fireworks-related calls we responded to in that time period since the fireworks ordinance was enacted in 2006. We issued 2 warnings. 3 of the calls were unfounded, and 6 of the calls we were unable to locate. And I provided council with a memo that includes a list of those calls. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Okay, thank you very much, Gary. And for the fire department report on fireworks, here's Chris Waring, our fire marshal.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. This year we had unprecedented heat, so there was a lot of concern, concern on our part. So we did a massive social media blast to everyone out there about how dangerous it is. Usually we have 3 fireworks stands. This year we only had 2. And when I spoke to the salespeople, they only had about 1/3 of their normal inventory, so there was fewer fireworks out there. We asked them to also put out flyers in each of the bags when they sold. We also did patrols once they started selling fireworks on the 1st. And second, patrols with myself, Deputy Fire Marshal Tony Nutman, and also WSU Life Safety Officer Darren Jones patrolled up on campus, ensuring that people were abiding by the no fireworks rule. We were chasing a lot of them, but on the 3rd, when they were allowed to light fireworks, we did a lot of patrols, did a lot of interactions with the public, asking them, do you have a garden hose, fire extinguisher, how are you disposing of your debris? And it was well received. Everyone was very safe, very receptive to our concerns. We had a few fires that did happen. The first one was on July 3rd at approximately 10:40 p.m. It was dispatched out at Golden Hills and Waha Drive, and there was some confusion because at the same time they also dispatched a wildland fire at 635 Southwest Sundance. Myself and Deputy Fire Marshal Tony Nutman went up to Sundance and realized it was the same fire down on Golden Hills and Waha, and that was fireworks shot off in that area. The people that actually started the fire were stuck around, and the police officers dealt with them. I believe they issued warnings to them. The second fire was located on July 4th on Southeast Bypass Drive and Clearwater Street at approximately 9:30. It burned about 100 feet by 100 foot swath of grass in a construction area. It's just a wildland grass. No structures were impeded upon. Both fires, the previous fire and this fire, and all the fires were responded by both District 12 and Pullman fire units. The fireworks cause there was fireworks lit off by somebody in that area, and they stuck around and they were counseled. The third fire, I'm sorry, I was patrolling and I was up on off Steptoe Village and looking over, and I said, wow, that is a nice view. It's Northwest Hill. Yeah, and that's a tree on fire, and I could see that fire all the way from over there. It was located at 420 Northwest Harrison at approximately 10:15. It was also the ground on fire was about 10 feet by 20 feet in the backyard of a house. Structures were close, but they weren't, fire crews were able to get there in a timely manner to keep the structure from catching on fire. I did find a legal mortar round at the base of the tree that caught on fire, so that cause was also firework related. The last fire was located at 920 Southwest Atani Drive at approximately 11:30 on July 4th. It was reported by fireworks in a dry grass weeds, and the husband had extinguished the fire prior to fire department arrival. I did not make it to that scene, but it was put out by the person that actually started the fire with legal fireworks. So all the fires that we responded to on the 3rd and the 4th were all started by legal fireworks shot off in Pullman city limits. The last call I'm going to talk about was the traumatic injury at 370 Northwest Thomas Street. Individual was mishandling a legal fireworks sold here in Pullman, and it cut his leg pretty severely. And I want to commend the Pullman Police Department and also Life Safety Officer Darren Jones for applying a tourniquet that they carry and have been trained on to use, and I believe they saved that man's life. We did a lot of interactions with the public, stopping, talking to them, asking about fireworks, or fire extinguishers, garden hoses, did you wet down the grass, how are you disposing, and everyone was very receptive. I think because of the patrols and media blast with the social media blasting, a lot of people were understanding why it's really serious here in Pullman. And do you have any questions of me?
Any questions at all? Oh, Dan?
Thank you for briefing us on this. My question is really about, there was a couple of fires where the people were still around and they were counseled afterwards. Where there's property damage involved with a fire, what kind of consequences can people face?
If they hit the fire, if they are stuck around and there was damage to structures or landscaping, the property owner can seek retribution from them. These were construction sites, so it's just kind of a grass covering that's put on the ground to keep erosion control, I think is what it damaged. And one of the property owners contacted my office wondering about damage to his trees that were on the property, and there was no damage because it was quick moving fire, so it didn't stick around. It didn't have enough energy to light the trees on fire, just the light fuels on the ground is what burned. So.
Okay, are there ever any times like that where the city, either police or through other fining mechanisms, would have additional monetary consequences to somebody besides just the property owner taking civil action?
There is some, during the third and fourth, if they're lighting legal fireworks, I don't think we have, they're being cautious about it, but I can't really think of how we could cite them for, if they were using illegal fireworks or improperly using them or shooting them at each other or shooting them into houses, we might be able to have action with that. But if they're lighting legal fireworks and they're trying to be safe about it, some of these just get away from them in the dry conditions, and that's why we have to ask them to have garden hoses and fire extinguishers at the ready.
Okay, thank you.
The ones that we can see all over town from the height that's almost close to the 4th of July legal fireworks that we're shooting off with professionals, those are considered illegal, I would assume.
The size or diameter of the mortar round, the legal ones are 1 3/4 inch diameter. Those are sold at the fireworks stands.
Yeah.
Anything greater than that, that's illegal. That is something we can confiscate, cite them for. But a lot of people question about the mortar rounds going off. They're legal. But some of the bigger ones, the 3 and 4 inch, the ones they launch at the Sunnyside Park, those have to be done with professionals.
Right.
So,
Okay. Any other questions? Chris, thank you very much.
thank you.
Item number 3 on the presentations tonight will be the financial update for the second quarter. And here is Mike Urban, City Administrator, former still finance expert. So,
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. Let me get the report up and operating here. There we go. Okay. So thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The only update I made to this presentation from the last time it was on a council agenda that it was tabled due to time was this slide. I updated the date. So if you're referring to the other one or this one, both of them are current. So as we like to start our updates, we always like to start with the general fund because this is where our police, fire department, parks and rec, library, administration, planning, HR, and finance all live in this fund. It's the most volatile revenue source for collections because this is where our sales tax goes into. So that's why I send out the monthly sales tax reports. So if you'll see here, the 2021 first 2 quarters here. The revenue budget was $11.25 million, and we came in just a little higher than that, 101% of our collection rate from what we had originally budgeted, back in July when we were under COVID operations and wondering what was going to happen. Some of the things that we like to keep our eye on special in this revenue source for council are the liquor sales tax items, and you can see those are up 9.8% versus the same period last year. And then our marijuana sales are down literally $389 in sales tax collections versus the same period last year. You'll notice the admissions tax continues to be down through the second quarter as we were coming back to full operations from the pandemic. Movie theaters were, there was some issues getting those back open, and other admission type items for collection. But some good news coming back behind that is with the football season coming back, there's going to be some admissions tax collections coming in the third quarter for those of us that paid off our season tickets, and just even general admission there. Any questions on this one? Okay. Okay, so I mentioned sales tax revenue. We'll get right into that one here. You'll notice that came in at $2,363,000, almost $500,000, which is over our $2.2 million expectation when we set up this revenue agenda or revenue budget item. So collection rate of 104%. I have another sales tax to download tomorrow as the month changes over and report to council by the end of the week as to how we did for, this is August, so this would be the June numbers coming in August. So you'll have another email from me this week, hopefully with some more good news. One-time sales tax from construction activities in this category was down versus last year for the period, $223,000, but we had that really large year last year, where by the end of the year on our construction, we were up 83%. So really what we're seeing here is a return to the 2019 levels, and that's what that last bullet point is. So versus 2019, our one-time sales tax on construction collection was up $4,000, about 1.2%. So we had that nice spike that carried us through COVID on one-time construction. We're starting to see it come back to more normal levels, and that's perfectly okay at this point in the day because the regular over-the-counter sales tax has been holding steady. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Property tax revenue, again, we get 2 injections of this every year when everybody pays their property taxes due by the end of April and also due by the end of October. We did increase the property tax by the limit of 1%, but as you can see, we have collected an extra $428,000 or 10% versus the same period last year. There's people that are paying their property taxes now early in one lump sum instead of waiting to see what the economy does and doing it April and October. There's a handful of folks out there that do it this way, as opposed to like me, who it just comes out of my mortgage and the bank pays it on my behalf. So without that 1%, it'd be obviously 9.3%, increase $386,000. So a lot of this, I look at the unemployment rate to project if we're going to collect on a regular basis, because as people are out of work, they start looking at what bills do they not pay. We are at 4.7% in this county versus 5.3%. We've always been one of the 2 lowest counties in the state as far as unemployment rate goes. We're 8th lowest. There's a few others that have jumped in ahead of us with lower unemployment rates, but we've been very steady at 4.7, 4.3, those low 4, mid 4 numbers, and always trending better than the state in this community. Okay, questions on property tax? Oh. Itchy trigger finger. Utilities, yep, okay. So utility revenues, as you can see here, we had budgeted Michael. There we go. We had budgeted for collections of just over $1.2 million, and it came in at 1.3. So we're collecting at 109% of our estimates on this budget item. Natural gas over the same period was up a little bit, 5.4%. Electricity over the same period was barely up, and I think a lot of that can be due to the fact that those first 6 months of the year, we were still not having a lot of folks in town as far as students goes, but we're trending in the right area. And our city-owned utilities really show that, as they were down $45,000 or 18%. So everybody's still washing their hands with COVID. There's just less folks in town to do that. Okay, question on utility revenues? Be careful this time. Here we go. This is the last general fund revenue item. Building permits, we always like to look out at this one because this will help give us an indication of future one-time construction sales tax coming in. Our collection rate is 177% over estimates, and you can see that large change between 2021 and 2020. So even though the sales tax that has come in very close to 2019, there's permits out there that we might be seeing a pop here later in the year as far as things getting delivered, supplies notwithstanding, because that's still an issue in the building industry. But you see a lot of dirt being moved, and you see a lot of activity still on that north end. So last quarter, on that third bullet point, we're showing a $289,000 increase, or 214%. When we looked at the first quarter, that number was a 435% increase. So what we're seeing is a little gradual slowing down. We got those building permits out in the first quarter, and now the work's really kind of going on outside in the community. So still a very large number. I know our protective inspections division is very, very busy going out and getting some things permitted and inspected and all of that. Any questions on building permit revenue? Okay. So one of our special funds, our street and arterial street revenues. This fund does rely on utility income as well. So you'll see how the utility kind of mirrors in here. I thought this would be a good point also to mention that our telephone collection, tax on telephone, continues to be down. This is a long-term trend as everybody has gone to the cell phone and abandoned their home phones. It just continues to go on. We're still collecting, but it's not near where it used to be in the past. Collection rate is 92% of estimates. Over the same period of last year, $790 difference. So we're still collecting, just we had a little more optimism on the estimates for this one. Great number to see is that fourth bullet point. Our real estate excise tax is up, especially when you compare it to last year, where a lot of the home sales were put on hold for a long time because people couldn't go in and look around. So a 62% increase in that is very, very welcome. And then fuel tax is something we follow along as well, and it's pretty much on par. It was up $773, not even 1%. So these are the funds that we use to do the paving and all the other street repairs you see out there for both our major and our arterial streets. Okay. Any questions on this one? Ann?
Excuse me. You mentioned the telephone lines disappearing, but people are using, I don't know if they're using telephone lines, but what are people using, the sources for internet connections in homes? Does that make up at all for the loss of the telephone line revenue?
It comes in a different line through a different revenue source and fees from the provider, and it's not an apples to apples type of a thing, but it's like, hey, we're doing really well over here because people are abandoning this to come over to that side. It's not an apples to apples thing, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So let's move on to the actual utility funds revenue as it stands. So First thing to point out is the moratorium by the state of Washington was set to expire at the end of July. It has now been extended to the end of September. I checked before I came to this meeting. I haven't seen another extension, but this thing's been extended many, many times. So we'll keep an eye on that, and that's the moratorium for shut-offs, interest and penalties for late bills. Now, Moscow, over in Idaho, they do not have the same state regulations, and back in July, they reinstituted those fees, and they're educating their constituency on those. They did do some write-offs on some past due bills, and I'm still trying to get to better information on that. It was really more of just a blurb that it came across. But as it stands right now, that moratorium is in place until September, and this council, during COVID, before the state took any action, did waive all the shutoffs, interest penalties on that, so people can keep the water flowing at their house and keep their hands washed and help stop the spread of COVID. So that was something this group was ahead of the state on. Nathan?
Thank you, Mike. On the subject of the moratorium, in the Poverty Awareness Task Force, we've been talking about how we're going to face a lot of issues once that actually goes away. Do we have plans? Are we going to be understanding with people as it begins to, the moratorium goes away? Because there's predictions, at least with the people that I've talked to, we're going to have a huge increase in homelessness, poverty, and I want at least us to be as understanding as we possibly can, trying to get back to normal.
Sure, absolutely. We do want to work with our utility customers and come up with a reasonable, responsible plan to make sure that we can collect on the services that we're providing. There's a couple items. We still have the COVID, what do we call it here? COVID-19 emergency payment plan. You can still apply for that. Nobody has in several months. Everybody that has applied for it and was accepted before has paid their bill and they're staying current. So we're going to leave that up for a little bit. We're starting to talk about what are we going to do when the 30th comes along, but we're treading down that road very lightly simply because by the time we get a plan going, it gets extended. So we're looking for a little more, okay, is this going to get extended again, or okay, we're going to have to do something now? We'll come up with a few solutions and certainly bring that back to council. Dan?
Because council took action prior to the state moratorium, when we took action, I'm trying to recall, did we have an end date on that? Or do we need to take action to rescind that at some point, regardless of what the state does?
I would want to double check, but if memory serves me correctly, and it seems like a lifetime ago, I think it was going with the state of emergency. So okay. Laura's kind of half nodding at me. Yay, me, I remembered it. So yeah, I think as long as the state of emergency is in effect, we have that flexibility.
Okay.
Okay. On the same count, down there in the yellow, you'll see the community action is still a good partner with us, that they have some funds available to help some of these people to qualify. So that's something we continue to push on our website as well. But yeah, the long and the short of it, you'll see that we're 78% collection rate on our estimates, and part of that's because we receive a check from WSU on a regular basis, but not monthly. And the timing of when we received that check was in the third quarter versus the second quarter. So you'll see that we're down a little bit, but it'll equalize a lot more when I give you the third quarter report. So I don't have any concerns. It's simply just a timing issue on getting that one very large check. And the $867,032 that were down versus the previous year, a lot of that will be made up by that check. Okay, so that's the utility revenue. Are there any questions on this one? More questions? Okay, transit revenues, very straightforward. There's a nice big line that jumps straight up, and you'll notice that Our budget was just over 3.6 million, and we collected just over 3.6 million. So our collection rate should be higher than 99%. So I want to double check that number if we collected 3.642. So there is a typo in there somewhere. I will get that fixed. Over the same period as last year, we're up that $1.87 million, and a lot of that has to do with that FTA operating grant you see on that last piece below. Okay. Any questions on transit? Another revenue fund that we follow very closely is the civic improvement fund revenues. This is your collections on hotel and motel tax is the primary revenue source for this. There's a little bit of interest due to investments, but interest is not being paid very hard right now, but there's some money in our account there for projects. So we had expected things to still be in a different state, so we'd only budgeted $48,000 at this point in the day, but our collection rate is 267%, $128,000. So people have been in town. I know a lot of construction workers had been staying at different places, and as the students have come back, we've noticed the parents staying in hotels too, especially in the third quarter. So be very interested to see how this turns out at our next quarterly meeting. Okay. Okay. So let's switch to expenses. General fund, again, we always like to start here with the broad overview on this. One of the things we did that's a little quirky, and it's more so we have some sort of an apples and apples comparison, is normally in the second quarter we do an interfund transfer from all our different funds to support our internal service funds, like equipment rental division, buildings, and IT. We held off until the first week of the third quarter just so we can kind of look at apples and apples. So what you're going to see on the second bullet point on all of these is what was the actual, because last year we held that interfund until late in the year as a financing mechanism so we can see how things went. So I just wanted to do 1 year on an apples to apples comparison. So you'll see versus last year it's 80.1%. If we would have done the interfund transfer, that's what the second piece is. If we would have done it as normal, our expenditures would have been 91% of the budget. So that's the difference that you're seeing in there. Actual is 80.1, interfund is 91.3. For the third quarter, we've done the transfer, so it's going to look very different on that. But as we were coming out of the pandemic, even though we're all still wearing masks, but as businesses were allowed to operate, I think doing that interfund transfer in the third quarter made sense. So the next quarterly report will look a little more dire than before, but we're still spending under budget and watching our dollars going out. So that's the entire general fund there. We had budgeted 12 million and we'd spent just under 10, barely under 10. Any questions on the general fund in total? Okay. So first up, as I go through the budget book, and this is how I present it, is the legislative expenses. The expenditure budget was $244,000. We came in at $130,000, 53% of the estimated budget for expenditures. The increase versus last year is just additional costs for election and voter registration fees from the county. So this is where that comes and lives in this fund. So all in all, very normal. I don't have any concerns with the expenditures going on in this fund. Any questions? Next, we have finance and administration expenses. This is the finance department, HR, city attorney, the executive branch. And you'll see there's a precipitous drop on this, and a lot of that can be attributed to we were using some CIP dollars that flowed through this fund to finish the building that we're in, and since the building construction is complete, that expenditure has gone away. So all in all, again, it'd be 81% against the estimates. If we would have done the interfund, it was 87%. So again, I feel very comfortable about the expenditures on this one. Insurance was the other piece where we used to absorb all that insurance in the general fund in this department, and now that is spread across other funds as well, so they can absorb their fair share, and we can actually see what that true cost is of operating these different departments. Okay. Any questions on finance and administration? Okay. Okay. Next up in the budget book is law enforcement. $3.9 million was the projected expenditure for the budget. Came in at 3.5, so our expenditure rate is 89% against the estimates. Over the same period, we're up 302, and a lot of that increase is attributable directly to the insurance. So when we spread it across, it's based on worker hours as well as past exposure. So 70% of it's worker hours because that's our exposure, and 30% of it is past instances because that's what we carry on our insurance bills. We did have an insurance audit last week. It went well. We expect a couple things to drop off in the next 2 years and our insurance rates to stabilize, but insurance rates across the state are going up anyway. So playing that game has been the challenge. Any questions on law enforcement? Okay. Followed by fire and ambulance. Again, a $4 million budget for the first half of the year. Expenditure rate 83%. Up over the previous year, $327,000, but again, it's the same piece as the insurance piece. Also, the police department used to absorb the entire dispatching fees for the city, but we looked at that and said, now fire gets dispatched too. So we came up with a fair equation to move some of those costs over here. And then the last piece is there's a staffing part because there were some large grants that came in from Chief Lamoureux for some training, and the training overtime was paid for by that grant. So we have some revenue that came in. The expenses are showing up over here, but all in all, I don't have concerns on the expenditures in this department either. Just like police, I think they're managing their budgets very well and trying to keep the city and community well taken care of from a public safety standpoint. Okay. Okay, the Community and Economic Development Group, this is your planning department. Protective inspections, economic development, all live in here. They're aggregated. So on a $642,000 group of expenses budgeted, they're spending at 85% at just over $550,000. Over the same period, down about $32,000. And the decrease on this one is really attributable to we had less professional services that we spent out on. I'd have to go back and double check. I was prepared last month to talk about which professional services those are, but I did not write a very good note. So I apologize on that. If memory serves me correct, it was for some plan review help, but I can double check that. Okay, questions on this group? Okay. Okay, our next one is the library. And during the last update, I received some questions from council about our operations. So when the state changed their rules at the end of June on July 6th, the library did resume their normal hours since there wasn't any governor's orders or Department of Health or Labor and Industry guidelines telling us to do otherwise. So those did resume. Staffing has been increased, both hiring casual staff and filling some full-time positions, as well as material and software purchases have continued to happen. Joanna's working on those with her staff to make sure that we are refreshing those items through this quarter, and that's ongoing. All in all, there was a $936,000 expenditure budget. Through the first half of 2021, $629,000 was spent. That's about 67%. A lot of that's in staffing, just because we weren't allowed to be open for so long. So having those bodies in there, there was work to be done, but not enough. But now that we're open, attendance has been robust, and staff's back and really enjoying helping the community out. Another change you'll see from the previous year is we did the roof this time last year. So of that $644,000 in 2020, $109,000 of it was roof, and so really you can see we've increased our purchases on materials and other items there for the library over this last quarter. Any questions on the library? Okay. We're almost there. Our Parks and Recreation, this is our last general fund item we're going to be looking at here. Budget of $1.7 million going into the first half of the year, spending out at 1.1. So our expenditure rate is about 63%, but again, if you put that interfund back in there, it jumps up to 82%. So the increase versus last year is just really as we're resuming our programs plus the distributed insurance to these groups. There's a lot of square footage in the rec department as far as the new gym goes next door, so they have a chunk of the insurance that goes to them as well. Yeah, our programming is significantly up to cover these expenses, and we've heard a lot of really great things from the community. Glad that we can be open and start doing some things, even though some of the things are masked. But getting staff to help with doing more programs is a little bit of a challenge, but something that the department's really jumping on and trying to move forward, especially now that the students have arrived and we can use some of them for coaching and those types of things. Okay. Any question on Parks and Rec? Okay. A street and arterial street expense, the expenditure budget was $2.3 million. We spent out 1.4. Over the same period, we're up $509,000, but a lot of that is we got a lot of streets projects going. I think there was a partial payment on Harvest Drive that happened in the second quarter, so that's what you see there. So now that that project is complete, we'll see in the third quarter that smoothing out a little bit. Any questions on streets and arterial? Okay. The utilities expense, $10 million expenditure budget, $4.1 million expended. Over the same period, year over year, we're down about 16%. So the decrease in expenditures is attributable to the reduced capital project and the associated professional services that go along with that. We are working on some other projects. We'll see those numbers go up, and it's just a matter of getting some throughput in our Public Works Department to continue working on these utility items. Questions on utilities? Okay. I got 3 more slides for you. Transit is up now. The expenditure budget was 4.2 for the first half, 4.2 million for the first half of the year. You see we expended less than half of that because we were expecting the timing of the electric buses. We thought they would be in, and we'd be paying for those in the second quarter once we've inspected them and made sure that they were ready to go and operational. That didn't happen until the third quarter, so we'll see that as a timing issue on the next report. And yeah, basically just talked about the fourth item there. But versus the same period last year, up $156,000 in expenditures, but still well under budget. Let's see. Nope. And yep. Nope, that's what I have for transit. Any questions on this one? Okay, our last expense item is that internal services fund. We continue to do our equipment rental division, buildings and IT department. They continue to operate on reserves while we transfer over. The interfund, all balances are healthy. We're seeing some, getting some computers in on a normal, regular replacement basis has been a little bit of a challenge due to the chip shortage. So that's why you see the difference in the $81,000, because normally we'd keep replacing these computers, but it's been weeks and weeks on some of these to get some in. So that, not just that, but some of the bigger IT projects like switches and those types of items. Okay. Any questions on this? All right. So my last one, the unanticipated sales tax refund. I sent an email with a memo out last week talking about the final amount we've received. The audit has been completed. We came in under $600,000 as to what was owed. Went through and looked at where we had organic savings, so we would not affect community operations like I did last time, or have to worry about people, and I was able to identify the entire balance due, as well as if we would have had to do the $600,000, where would that have came from. So it's done. We have until November to finish the payments to help smooth our cash flow. So it was great working with the Department of Revenue. I believe we only have about $120,000 left to pay and 3 more installments for September, October, and November, but this will all be behind us by the end of the year. And the taxpayer has been watching their invoices. I do not anticipate another one of these. I do not anticipate another one of these. I do not anticipate another one of these. So, but we've had some really great communications with the taxpayer on this, and they're on the ball, and they've been reporting and back and forth, and it's nice to have this one back behind us now.
Brandon, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, Mike, just for the context of it, because I know folks that are watching at home, it does sound like the end of a long, arduous journey to get here, and you did tremendous work to get us back. But would you give just a small summary of what we're talking about, just for that context?
Sure. I remember it vividly because it was the morning after the council had taken the interim tag and approved me as city administrator. Hadn't even been 24 hours yet. And I received a phone call from the Department of Revenue saying, by the way, you owe a taxpayer some sales tax money. We've audited the first year, which went back to 2015, and that amount is $120,000. And so I did some quick math and panicked, because if that's the same amount for every year, we're talking well over $1 million. We worked with the taxpayer, we worked with the Department of Revenue, tried to get an idea of what our potential exposure was, and they'd come up with $600,000. And what had basically happened is this taxpayer had paid sales tax on equipment that was not subject to sales tax. So this was a true refund. And when you look at your sales tax bill in our town, it's 7.8%. Well, 1.3 of that is local. So that's what we were on the hook for. That means the state of Washington was on the hook for that other 6.5. So they were going through this very carefully and auditing all the requests, and they were coming in with these numbers at a regular basis. We wanted to get through a year and a year and a year. So since that January day, we've been receiving regular updates until, I want to say about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, where they said, we finished the audit and here's the last piece. And as we were going through this process and determining how much we owed for each of these years, the state was actually helping us float this a little bit. Instead of us having to write a check back for that first $120,000 immediately, we were able to negotiate a payment plan with the state at no cost to us, no interest to our community, and help us smooth out our cash flow as we worked our way through the COVID pandemic. So it was a group effort by a lot of people to get us there. The memo just happened to come from me.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate, again, the context on that, and I think it was a job very well done, and not the fire hose you wanted to drink from on the first day, but thank you.
All right, thanks for the question. Okay. So the second item I have is the American Rescue Plan. This is something we continue to work on as a executive staff. One of the key components to what we're going to bring you for a menu of choices is the downtown. And council approved that RFP to go out, and that is a key part of that, because working with a consultant to help us determine what the actual expenditure is going to need to be and how we can put those monies aside is very important on how we're going to spend those dollars out. So we continue to work real hard to get a lot of choices in here. We're looking at the council goals and priorities and making sure those are addressed. And I would like to be back by the end of September with a plan, but I think based on the RFP, it might be early, but I think some more discussion is still worthwhile. Another note on the American Rescue Plan, for some reason in the state, somebody turned down some money. So they did a reallocation, and we're actually going to be getting another $9,400 than what I've reported in the past. We just found out about this week. So again, in 2 tranches, the first one this year and the next one next year. Okay. One of the items I put on, I know there's a council goal of staffing reports and a staffing report as part of the council goals. I just wanted to ask this body, does it make sense to add it to this presentation because there's some finance related to it, or is this better to come in a memo because I'm right on track as my usual 40 minutes goes, and I just didn't know if we wanted to belabor that or not. So as council adopts their goals here, I believe it's coming back to you on the 14th. I'm just going to look for a little clarification on what council's pleasure is on this.
I'm good with it being in this report for the finance part of it.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And then the last item I have to touch on is the capital improvement program and transportation improvement program. Let you know where we are on those items because it is a finance related. So the draft already went out to the CIP committee, the planning commission. Council got the same draft at the same time. Since then, the committee has met and on the 9th of August, and now the Planning Commission has met, and what you're going to be seeing in your next council packets are their recommendations. And public hearing is scheduled for the City Council on the 14th of September, and then we'll put on the 28th possible adoption. We don't want to have to make a decision the same night you're hearing the public hearing. So it's been reviewed very carefully by administrative staff. We're trying to identify projects, especially 2022 projects, that could be ARP dollars eligible. So not only is it in our CIP plan, if we use the American Rescue Plan to do some of this work, it maintains our regular fund balances. So trying to maximize those for the projects that the ARP dollars are scheduled for is a really great use. So we'll be talking about those as we go into the public hearing and the question and answer period on the capital improvement and transportation improvement programs. And with that, Council, that's the end of my scheduled presentation. Are there any additional questions that I can answer?
Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, Mike, this is amazing. You are always doing such an impressive job keeping us in the loop and really on budget. And I think your report is a real testament to how all of the departments came together in leadership and really, you know, pulled together. So I think that's extremely important to recognize. I did have a question, and this is just personally, is there a way to do departments' revenue and expenses side by side?
Kind of. We can do that with some of the special funds like streets and arterial streets. But when you get into those items in the general fund where all of us are taking, the property tax is the big dollar, and then the sales tax comes through, how do I identify that down to the department as what's their revenue for finance department or the executive versus recreation? And that's the challenge.
I know, it's very, very different. For me, being more visual, I appreciate what you've done here in the bullet points. I was just asking about your expertise on that, so.
I think I can do something, add a couple slides about, general fund revenue and its totality, general fund expenses, and put that together so you can see that. But, splitting it farther down, that gets, let me put some additional thought on that. I'll do some research to see how some other cities do, but, yeah.
By no means, don't lose any sleep over it. It's just,
I lose it over other things.
thank you.
Brandon?
Yeah, I'm just gonna one more time say thank you. I guess beyond anything, Mike, how would I say this? I'm definitely a non-specialized audience for finance. I appreciate your ability to communicate these financial matters in a way that helps me to represent residents. It is extremely beneficial to get things maybe in layperson's terms, and you've done a good job connecting the dots. I also, and I think residents would want to know this, that there are a number of other revenues and other sources that you continue to examine. You have given a presentation on tourism promotion area. I know it's not coming up right away, but it's in the hopper to do transportation benefits district. These are things that you continue to keep an eye on, and I really appreciate that. And I know that's not going to make sense to everybody that may be watching or hearing about it, but it is an additional lift. But I think it's well worth it, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And just a quick update on those two items. Getting the hoteliers together for a deeper TPA discussion. I'm shooting for the second week of September. And the Transportation Benefit District presentation item is coming on the 28th due to the three public hearings scheduled on the 14th. So I don't want to belabor that day.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Next on our agenda is item D, which is a consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. The council's had a chance to look these over ahead of time. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Laura McAloon, our city attorney, and welcome back.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the special meeting of August 7, 2021, and approve them as submitted. A motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 24, 2021, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 104152 through 104197, totaling $617,443.38. A motion to authorize staff to accept Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act Operating Grant Agreement, PTD 0237 for Pullman Transit. A motion to accept Contract 20-3, Transit Building Electrical Upgrades Contract is complete. And a motion to ratify Change Order Number 1 to the Arterial Streets Resurfacing 2020 project.
Is there any item the council would like out for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 6. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now move to the regular agenda. This is the motion to authorize the reorganization of the Maintenance and Operation Division. With that, we have our Superintendent for Maintenance and Operation, Art Garrell.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm proud and thankful to be here tonight, to seek your authorization for a reorganization and staffing plan that we've been working on. Let me just slow down. This presentation is based on the memo that I distributed on August 17th. And this evening I'll be talking specifically about what's driving the need to have these changes made, the proposed organizational changes, and then finally the financial impacts of the request. I'm going to pause. It's different points just in case we case you guys have any questions, so we can handle them as we go, especially when we get into the financial part of it, because I've chopped that up in several different slides. So with that, we'll get going. So what's driving the need for this reorganization? It really kind of boils down to staffing capacity and structural needs as far as the organization goes to implement new programs. I'm sure that pretty much all of you have seen this before. We're looking at computer maintenance management, soft system upgrades, and that really is, we use that program to collect data. When we issue work orders, we go out and do the work, we track the costs, we track the maintenance, or the labor parts of it, the parts part of it, and if we contract anything out, we track all that. The program that we currently use is called Maintenance Connection, and it's an older kind of cloud-based thing, and it's hosted on the city server. But it's not very, as far as being able to use it on browsers and other things, it's only, Internet Explorer version a long time ago. I don't know for sure which one it is, but my point is it's kind of antiquated. The other thing that we're looking at there is really having kind of an enterprise solution that's tied into our accounting software. We can do inventories with, we can work orders so that we can use that data throughout the organization. And so that's the other goal of the CMMS. The other thing we're working on is the implementation of advanced metering infrastructure. And I know that this is something that we've talked about before. We have a pilot project with Avista going on right now. It kind of got delayed. I think I came to council in February of 2020 with that, and you guys authorized that. COVID and the fact that a lot of Avista and our people were working from home, it just kind of didn't roll out. So, in fact, today, we got our first ERTS module, and, well, not our first. We went through several iterations, but I think the one that's actually going to work. So we hooked one up, and I'll know tomorrow morning. So that's kind of exciting. But this is really important for us. It gives us the ability to provide a portal to customers where they can manage their water consumption. And as you know, water's a big deal around here, and conserving it is a big deal. And so this is like, to me, it's like the ultimate thing. They can set up for notifications, all that kind of stuff. And alarms. So you could say, if I'm using this much between these two times, let me know. So I look forward to implementing that. And then the community-wide 311 system, which is something that we all want. And so, that basically allows citizens or whoever to, if they see a pothole in the road, they take a picture of it, it gets their location, and it comes into our work order system or our CMMS system. And then the crew is dispatched, and they get feedback on when that repair is done. So it really is a great communication tool. It's a great way to get those and not lose track of, them coming in. So that's another one of the programs we're working on. And then, we won't really lead in this one, but we're going to support the implementation of the Geographic Information System. So that's a key component of CMMS because it's all based on vertical or horizontal assets, spatial, and so all those are kind of tied together. But that's basically the four things that are driving the need to reorganize.
Brandon, you have
Hey,
a comment?
yeah, Art, before you move on, so in terms of the 311 system,
Yeah.
is this something that I think we already have either a contract or we're working with somebody on that? Is that true, or?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that we're working toward that. Really, you have to. It's one of those things where you have to build the foundation first.
Right.
And the foundation of that is CMMS.
Sure.
It wouldn't be a good thing if we went with 311 and didn't have the capacity to respond to our constituents.
Right, before GIS is done.
And so it's kind of the cart before the horse, okay? But we do have some ideas, and we've been looking at different programs. See, Click It, Fix It is one of them. And there are some CMMSs that have that built in. So,
Right, like Excel, which
but I don't
we've
know,
done, yeah.
Brandon, to answer your question directly, I don't know of anything that anybody we're working with. We
Mike's
have a
got
con-
that hand like he.
Yeah, I do have some. So we were working towards getting Excella up and operating, and that was going to be the framework and the backbone of the 311 system. But as I've been working with Art and Ryan through this process and talking to them more about the CMMS, we're pivoting from that and want it more driven into that system because we think it's going to be more advantageous, especially with the GIS. So part of this will move the 311 faster. We're no longer, my plan is to no longer wait for the Excella backbone, is to go forward with what we decide on CMMS and do it this way. And I think we can have it up and running several months sooner.
Yeah, I like to hear that because I know for residents, they'll some of these have an app, you know, where you can go and you can identify, here's the pothole, here's, you know, something else, and it can easily get to you, and you can tag it however you want, and it's very, very user-centric, so.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
the expectation is when we kick that off, is that I expect to see quite an influx of requests coming in on, you know.
Initially,
right
I
away.
would imagine.
And then it'll probably go down, but, you know, and so I just can't stress enough the importance of having that backbone.
Thank you.
Before that happens. Okay, the next thing that's driving the need, basically shared management of critical functions. And first of all, I have 9 direct reports, and that's way too many for me to kind of dive down into the details of a lot of these. These are very, a lot of these are big lifts, okay? And so I need to focus my time more on that and maybe long-term planning, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, so that's okay, so reducing those. And then we want to transfer to do that. One of the things I want to do is transfer the management of the equipment rental division to the business division. Now, Ryan Lancaster, who's our current accountant, and my request is that we name him as the manager of that business division. He is a certified fleet manager. He went through the Australian school to do that, IPWEA. So he's certified fleet manager, and it's just something that he and I've talked about. A lot of the functions, kind of the way we defined this was, he's kind of the internal face on our division, and that is he would be dealing with ERD rates, surplus, all those kind of things that are inward facing. And so, but this, and ERD is one of those that's big. So we'd be able to spend some more time with that. And then to also free up his time, so a lot of what Ryan does right now, and his title is accounting manager, or M&O accountant, he deals with a lot of accounts payable, okay? And we do that, a lot of that. In fact, we do more than any other department except for in credit card receipts, which I think Parks might have us on that one. But as far as POs, we do 25% more than any department. So what I'm asking is the consideration of taking our casual person, our part-time person, and promoting that position to full-time position. And then she'll be able to alleviate the business manager of accounts payable duties. She'll be able to assist the business manager with assets and prevailing wage requirements. And then, this is kind of a precursor to what's the next going to follow, but she'll be able to assist with utility billing, okay? So, and then streamlined utility billing workflow. So the way that utility billing currently works, it's been a finance kind of department as far as the bills go out, but our staff read the meters. And there's always been this loss of, you know, you have to come in, you know, coordinate that. There's a lot of traveling back, especially for our guys coming in and talking to staff. There's also the coordination of turning off meters and turning on meters and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. And not to mention, like, when somebody calls and they want us to go read a meter because they think it might be, you know, off. the way that we've been doing is very inefficient in that that person that works doesn't really know what our functions are. And so she has no idea how to kind of, when is the best time, and we don't know anything about what she does. So what we're proposing is to have the person that does the utility billing transferred to the business division, M&O business division, so that becomes under one kind of hat. And there's a lot of, I think we're going to gain efficiencies. It's going to be one-stop shopping for the citizens. Now, and kind of what I mean by that, if somebody wants a meter turned off, we don't turn off meters if they call Kristen, my assistant, for example. We have to have them call City Hall, which takes care of the billing part of it, and then City Hall lets us know. And this change will allow us to handle all that. So it's just going to be much more streamlined for the citizens. And then it's improved communication. So there'll be that opportunity during the workday for the billing people to talk to the people that go read the meters. And so we'll know more about what's going on and be able to plan for that. And then segregation of duties, which is a real big one for accountants. But basically, we need to make sure that not one person is doing that whole job. And because there's dealing with charges that go out to customers and that. And so and then there's also cross-training that it's not the same thing, but it kind of is. Right now, we have one person, and it was a couple of weeks ago that individual had taken a couple of weeks of vacation, and it was difficult. And so we'll be able to spread that workload out more and kind of cross-train so that other people can do that. So a little bit about the current organizational structure, and if you, on the screen there, the ones that are identified in red are the ones that I'm proposing to move to the M&O business division. But that is all 9 of my direct reports right now. And it says, I know it says M&O interns time 2. I only have 1 right now. I do have authority for 2, but no. So, but that's how it is. And then we're moving to this. And so I didn't put all the other direct reports on this slide. This is the same slide it's in your packet. So again, the reds are the ones that came from my direct reports that came into here. And then the green is the M&O business manager. And as you can see, it's got, interesting. That first one is an accounting specialist, or administrative specialist position. I thought I'd fix that. And then we have accounting specialist and administrative specialist, and then the automotive supervisor and the M&O IT position. And then, so might talk just briefly about the M&O IT position. That position was originally an M&O position, and then in 2013, Mark Bailey, the past IT director, wanted to have Michelle, that position, do some work for outside departments. And we decided it was better for him to move her to IT and not have to create another billing structure for that. And so she went into IT. And then IT would bill out for those services. But the way it's really worked out is, for the most part, she hasn't done much for IT, and she pretty much reports to me. She's in the same building, and I pretty much manage and supervise her workflow. So it just makes sense to have that come back to us because it's a position that we really depend on. We have a lot of reporting that goes to the state where we draw data out of different databases and stuff like that. And without having that position within our building, that would be very difficult to manage. So let's talk about the budget implications. So what I want to start with here is this is for a 16-month period, and I think that's important to keep in your mind Because when you look at these numbers, they can seem, you kind of say, well, does that person really make that much? And that, but remember, it's 16 months of time. So, on the screen there, on the top is kind of what we're going to work through. We're just going to work down that list. And then on the bottom, it's that red line, dotted or dashed line is going to kind of tie you into what that means. And so this is for the business manager position. And so if you look at the bottom, the salary requested is, gosh, I can't see that far, hold on. $109.62. And then, and then the benefits requested is $62,748. And again, that's for 16 months. And then, so then we already have the M&O accountant already budgeted, but it's budgeted at a lesser rate. And so with what we have remaining in the budget for the accounting position, we're about $19,791 short of breaking even on that, okay? So do you have any questions about that, those slide? Nope. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so this is for the information system technician position. And so this would be bringing it back to M&O. So the salary is $89,264. Benefits is $63,841. And then the, again, so the way we pay for this, we pay all of her salary anyway, but instead of, it comes out of the IT fund, not out of the M&O fund, so we have it's built into our IT charges. So IT will back off of our charges that $153,105 for the next 16 months, and I don't know how that happens exactly, but that will happen, and so that makes that basically no budget impact at all, because it's not changing anything. Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay. This is for the M&O accounting specialist. So this is bringing a finance person, accounting specialist, over to M&O to do the utility billing and that. So she's so her salary is $74,923, and then the benefits are $54,697, and that's offset by $129,619. Same kind of thing. The finance department will back that charge out because we pay that, and so it basically becomes no budget impact for that. We just won't pay it to the finance, and we'll pay it directly. Any questions on that one? Okay. Okay, so this is the administrative specialist, and we're going to move what we requesting to do is move the existing part-time employee to a full-time position, and this one makes up about 77% of the total increase in budget. Okay, or the total increase. And it is the salary requested $64,384, benefits $27,976, and then because we had budgeted out for the next 16 months, we had some funding there that was already allocated to that position. We won't be replacing that person, so it'll just go into full-time. And so that amount was $24,717, which makes the total budget impact for that one $67,643. So do you have any questions about that one? Okay. So in summary, what I'm requesting, try to get this to come up here, going through each one just specifically, I'm asking for your authorization to create an M&O business division, reclassify the M&O accountant to M&O business manager, and return the M&O Information Service Technicians from the Information Services Divisions to the M&O Business Division. Assign the Finance Accounting Specialist from Finance Department to the M&O Business Division. Convert an existing part-time office assistant position to a full-time administrative specialist, and move the Equipment Rental Division to the M&O Business Division, and reassign the existing administrative specialists to the M&O Business Division. And so that was probably a lot. So do you have any questions about that slide specifically?
Brandon?
Yeah, Art, I don't have any questions. I was aware and read through, and I knew that this was coming down the pipeline. I want to say thank you, because one thing that I have learned in the last, about 5 years is you are very thoughtful about these things, and you seem to connect in your head the different things that would help you be more efficient. But especially, I know that you have kept a mind on not only internal efficiency, but making sure residents understood how this affects them. And we talk about quality of life all the time, high tech, higher education, highest quality of life. Mm-hmm. And some divisions are really easy to see how they affect us. I mean, we know how parks positively affect us. We know how the libraries positively affect us. But when you guys had the Lentil Festival, the little tent and all that down at Rainey, I thought that was really valuable. And just I've been impressed by your approach to thinking through how does this affect other people, how does it affect us, and what can we do to be more efficient. And I'm on board with this. I think this is good.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon.
Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brandon said it very well. I appreciate what you're doing, trying to find ways to be more efficient. There are some questions. We're starting to see more reorganization, and I'm also looking at Mike here, a lot of reorganization of different departments. And some have been proposed, and they've all looked very good. I appreciate you giving the reasons of this. Mm-hmm. Moving forward, and I expect this is going to happen more often because we are growing quickly, and there's better ways to do things. Some more data into the reasons. You gave, don't get me wrong, I'm trying to communicate that you're giving examples, but I would also like to know about percentage efficiency. The amount of hours you're saying IT, the individual that moved into the IT department, which was assigned to you originally, was spending more time over with you. I'm not sure about the IT department. We haven't heard from them. I'm assuming this is all above board, that everybody's on the same page with this. Mm-hmm. But being able to understand exactly where these efficiencies are. Anecdotal evidence is great, but really being able to understand how this flow is going to help. Because I'm looking at this organizational flow, and essentially it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that everybody is reporting to the business manager.
That's true.
So, but in the red for your proposed...
Well, not everybody. I mean, you've got your reports too.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, so I didn't put on that set. You're referring to
proposed business division structure.
Right. So what I didn't show there was the rest of my reports. Is that what's confusing about that slide? Like, I still have the wastewater treatment plant supervisor. I still have the maintenance supervisor. I still have the operations supervisor. I still have the INC technician. I still have 5 of them. The business manager is just one of those 5.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand that.
Okay.
Down below, you have a few that say directly reports to M&O supervisor, is that correct? Superintendent? Mm-hmm. So they're actually not reporting, correct me if I'm wrong, to the business manager. They're reporting directly to you.
Those are just the ones that previously reported to him that will now report.
Yes.
Okay.
So the red ones in the first slide are how it is now.
Yeah.
And I just designated them red so that it was easy to follow them going into the business division and how they came away from me.
And now they're going directly to the business manager.
Business manager. And again, maybe what helps explain that a little bit, Nathan, is that the business manager is the inward facing. And so when you ask about IT, that direct report specifically, she supports wastewater treatment plant, water, all that, and in being able to report every month to Ecology and Department of Health and all our chlorine and fluoride reports. She's the one mining that data to make those reports. And so that's an inward-facing function, and that's why we placed that position underneath the business manager.
Okay. All right. Well, I trust your expertise. So
Okay, I
that's
appreciate
what,
that.
And this
I
process
appreciate
has
that,
been
yeah.
underway for, I'm trying to think of how many months we've been working on this project. It's quite a
Well
few.
over 90 days, and it has been coordinated across all the divisions.
With all the divisions. So,
Yeah.
if there are any other questions? If not, okay.
Motion to authorize reorganization of the Maintenance and Operations Division as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much, Art.
I need more practice.
Our next item is going to be a motion to authorize staff to advance with the City Council's selected engineering option of the Lawson Garden House, and Sean Coates, our Public Works Director, will be here tonight. Plus, we have several other people that probably might be part of this presentation, too. So, Sean gets the lead off.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we've got two folks with us. One is Alan Davis, of course, our own Parks and Facilities Director, and we also have with us Ned Warnick, who is with Design West Architects. And Ned is the lead on the design team for Lawson Garden House project. And I'd like to start with Alan to give us a little bit of background on this project, what we've done so far, and how we got to where we are.
Thank you. I'm going to provide a little history on how we got here and what you see on the slide as well. So it's been several years since I spoke to groups in this very building about the garden house while giving tours in this facility and the rec center prior to the vote on the 2018 bond issue. At that time, we had on display the original conceptual artwork created by Design West and a part of the original 2011 lodging tax grant. We also had the City Council approved 2015 $700,000 lodging tax grant for construction to be matched by bond funds. With the passage of the bond, construction was to begin shortly thereafter, but time commitments with staff really were tied to this building, City Hall, and the rec center. So a decision was made to hold off on the garden house until we were actually occupying those two buildings. Unfortunately, by holding off, the building went to bid right as material costs were escalating, bringing the low bid in far beyond the budget of $1.4 million. Regrouping after rejecting those bids, staff, Design West, and the Cemetery Committee started reviewing the project for possible savings. And I think we found a plausible solution that retains the original footprint, can be enclosed at a later date if desired, still meets the original goal of creating a unique venue, and perhaps even more unique, and establishes the master plan's hardscape focal point.
So a quick outline of the discussion tonight. I want to provide a little bit of background on the construction bid versus the budget. And essentially, what you're going to see is that the construction bid came in significantly higher than what was budgeted. And so we then looked at value engineering options with our design architect. And then I'll follow that with a discussion on recommended motion requests. But the bottom line is the available budget for the project is about $1.3 million. The construction bid that came in on this project in February of 2021 was just over $2 million. And what you see in this picture is the project that was originally bid. And with that, I'll have Ned Warnick with Design West Architects come in and give a little bit of background on that bidding process.
Thank you, Sean. So I'm sure the members of the council remember February of 2020, or yes, 2021, as accurately as I do, that it was a rude surprise as we were coming out of the pandemic and not really understanding what the construction market was going. Thank you. So that at the February of 2020, it was really difficult to predict how the construction market was going to react to coming out of the pandemic. Estimates were based on the scope of the project pre-pandemic, and what we realized was historical escalation that was beyond anyone's seen. And what occurred, we did receive 8 bids, so it was very clear that that was the construction market wanted to do the project, but at a price that was well beyond what the estimates or what the funding would allow us to do. Following that, we spent a feverish period of a month or two working with Kevin Gardis and the Public Works Department, the general contractors and the subcontractors that had bid it. And in that work, we understood much better as to what were the driving forces behind the cost escalation, and much of that had to do with materials cost increases. But there was no easy answers. There was not a simple way to bring this project into budget by doing less of this or something else in the project. And so we did consider a number of different options. Adding funds was not on the table. So we looked at the range from minimal changes to the materials, changing the quality of the materials on the building, to moderate changes to changing the shape of the building or eliminating things such as the upper windows. And clear to the point of major cuts to creating a smaller building in general, really kind of taking out 20 to 25% of the square footage, so reducing the scope dramatically. The graphic that's on screen right now is one of the tools that we used in working through this with the committee and with the city staff, and looking at different levels of what could we reduce the project scope to try to arrive at a viable project. None of the ideas were what was arrived at that is being discussed at this point, which is the open pavilion. So number 3 that you see up in front of us, that really didn't arrive into our consciousness until Alan and the committee brought that as an idea. And this really reconceptualized the design idea to move from an interior event space, similar to other event spaces that are for rent around town, to a unique shelter that could be special to the Lawson Gardens location. It does change dramatically what kind of programming and what sort of things that can be done in the space, but it does also reconceptualize what is the possible budget that we're to do this. And so by looking at that particular option, we do away with the cost of windows, the cost of doors, the cost of HVAC, the cost of interior finishes. And so it does make some significant headway in reconceptualizing the design problem that way. So in our latest meeting with city staff, we've narrowed it down to a comparison of what it is that you get and what is it that you don't get with the possible direction from what was the original plan to what is the open pavilion. And to try to describe the open pavilion, it is very similar or the same footprint. The roof line and the roof structure is essentially the same. Restrooms are still enclosed and heated and are interior restrooms, but the remainder of the space is open to the garden. So it is a pavilion that is open to the formal garden of Lawson Gardens. And so to try to illustrate this, you can see the original scope, an interior event space with meeting rooms that look out onto the garden. This is from the parking lot, so this is what you would see as you parked and you approached that and you entered the main entry, which is the center of the building around to the right there, to what the open pavilion would be. And so I realized that we were comparing day and night here. This was actually unintentional, but our artistic rendering actually did turn that into that. So the original bid is the day views and the pavilions are the night views. But so very similar in appearance, just removing the windows and the doors, and still retaining much of the same look if you're a neighbor and you're looking down to it or around it from the surrounding neighborhood. It's the same size and bulk. The change is that it goes from being an interior event space to being a pavilion or a shelter. And there you have the floor plan, or at least the conceptual floor plan of what might be possible with the pavilion approach.
So bringing this back to our available budget versus what we're estimating for costs for options, the lowest cost option that was identified in that 4-option list was that open pavilion concept at $1.6 million. Again, our available budget's a little under $1.3 million, so there's still a funding gap there to be made up if that lowest cost option is selected. So to finish, what we're looking for is for guidance from council on which project you'd be interested in advancing. And then we're looking for you to direct staff to look into additional project funds and then return a funding proposal to council. And then this last bullet item is critical to essentially getting good bids for the project. This last item is to prepare a redesign contract amendment with Design West to get them working as quickly as possible on a selected option. And the reason I say that is we would need to have them start more or less in the next few weeks on a redesign in order to be ready to bid a redesign project in the February timeframe, and that's the timeframe that would offer us the best bid prices. So that's the goal of that third bullet item. And with that, we'll take questions.
Comments or questions? Go to Nathan first, and then we'll go to Brandon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a few things. Now, you had mentioned, right, that walls, exterior can be added at a later. Is that, yeah, okay. Okay. My concern is that, you know, voters had seen the original, and, you know, we don't want to do kind of a cup game where it's like, oh, wait, no, actually it's over here. So I'm a little concerned about that. Of course, we all understand the rising prices, so on. I wish Pat was here. She's kind of the expert on the council in this. Another concern for me is that an open concept such as this, I'm thinking worst case scenario, tagging, people camping out under there. And everybody knows on the council, I'm all about being welcoming and helping homeless, but I can see this as definitely a draw as a place to take shelter. And then also, Ned, I know you do amazing work, but as far as the weather, will that degrade the interior if it's an open concept?
So the revision to the pavilion from the interior would really be, and it won't look at all like a Sunnyside or a Terraview Park shelter, but it will be very similar in the functional durability and the materials that are used in that. So it would be capable to become an interior space in the future, but I don't want to make light of or underestimate your comment. It is a major switch to go from an interior space to what is a shelter, what is a pavilion space. So the durability and the concern about tagging and security and the behavior issues, whether I guess I'm not as concerned about homeless as I am about hooligans. You know, my kids have outgrown that stage, but I'd be the first person to be worried that they might be the transgressor of that. But we know how to handle that. The other park shelters have been able to be quality structures that still look good years later and are maintained in a good way. So the degradation, I don't think is as big a concern to me as what your comment of, are we playing a shell game? And I think that's why we don't take this lightly, and we're very seriously coming to the council asking in total openness, what do you wise people who represent the people have to say about this situation? I, for one, would be much happier being in this position of cutting a ribbon on the original design than to be here tonight having to put you in this dilemma. But it is that kind of weight of an interior program space versus an exterior space.
Just before I go to Brandon, Alan, could you come up to the podium, because you've been working with the Lawson Gardens Committee, and at one time they were actually saying, well, we can't do it at all, and then they changed their opinion to recommend something different to the council.
When we got together, that was one of the comments was, if we couldn't do the original building, why do we do anything? And then they started looking at the possibilities. The pavilion actually is the same footprint as the original building. I mean, it could be built at some point if someone like Gerald again came along. I don't see that happening immediately. But once they started talking about that and talking about the tents that they use for PRH and all the events that they have that way, it started moving toward this is a 3-season building that might get more use than even the enclosed one, and you wouldn't have the staffing issues that you had, the HVAC and those things. There are issues with tagging, but that can be done through graffiti proof and some other measures. I think the key from the committee and the key that I see is, and Gerald, originally it was going to be a glass house, and once Gerald knew how much that was going to cost, that disappeared. It needed to be something more sustainable. But what you have is a focal point. So if you think of this building now being open as opposed to being closed, and as you open, there's no glass at the entrance. You come right through that. You look down onto the terrace because all the hardscape and the stairs and everything else that they had before is still there, leads onto the terrace garden, right out to the gazebo. And you'd have the ability for chamber music inside there. You'd have the ability for Shakespeare in the Park. I think it's got great use. Our horticulturist was excited because of the plant sales and trying to generate funds, and that would be an issue. And she's actually bugged me since she got here about Christmas lights through Lawson. You could have an event there and make a little money on hot chocolate, maybe, who knows. But that was the idea, and that's where it started. So it actually went from, why are we even moving forward, to something that they thought might be doable.
Okay, Brandon, you were next.
And Alan, I think that's a really good point in terms of the use. I actually do think it would get more use as a pavilion. From what I'm hearing from residents, I think what rubs them raw is that they, for obviously circumstances outside of our control, they believe that they were saying yes on one thing and may not be getting that thing. And I'm not happy about that either, because I thought it was a gorgeous building. So I certainly would not be happy about what I'm going to ask Laura about this. I think there's another option, which is it's none of these options. I mean, can we say none of these are going to work, and what would the process be for the bond in that case, for that portion of the bond?
It would be the same process you're going through now, to talk about how to build the pavilion with bond proceeds and but not be able to build what you had originally envisioned. So you retained the ability in both the election resolution and the bond ordinance itself to make changes to the projects based on changed circumstances. You don't have to go back to the public and have an opportunity for public input, but that's always an option. But it's not required. It is the council's discretion, based on the current circumstances, how to spend those bond proceeds. If you wanted to spend $700,000 on a different parks project, you could do that. What you would be limited to is spending it on parks projects.
Yeah, so, but one of those options would be not having a building, right? I mean, we could elect not to do the
Correct.
building
If
at all,
you-
which
y-
I
you're
don't like
saying
that
don't
idea, I just,
You're saying don't spend the funds at all?
Right.
The bond proceeds? Okay, so what you have to do with the bond proceeds is you do have to spend them within a certain period of time. The IRS requires that. But one option is to spend them on other projects, and then you can always, the other option is to apply bond proceeds to your debt service. So you can use bond proceeds to fund your debt service payments on the bonds.
yeah, no, and I appreciate that, Laura, for what that legal issue is. I worry that, I mean, there's legal and there is what I would consider maybe the right thing to do, and I don't want to erode public trust where when the next bond comes up, somebody's going to say, well, I'm not sure I want to vote yes on this because if it doesn't go the way we want, they will take that money and spend it on something else, right? I mean, I think that's the worry, and I really want this project. I'm fearful that it's not what people originally said yes on.
Just before we go to the next one, remind you that a few years back, we had a pavilion park, Path Pavilion. We were talking about building a beautiful pavilion at Sunnyside Park. And then we had a committee that went through it, and they started just adding everything, and it was over $3 million by the time they finished. We have now a portable stand that is, the concept was there. We needed a bandstand. We have that now, and we've been able to take it to Rainy, we've been able to take it to Sunnyside. We've got additions now that we get ready for the 4th of July. So yes, they had a vision of a building. It turned out to be a portable trailer that can actually be far more use. So we have done those kinds of things. Eileen is next, and then we'll go to
Yeah, and Mayor, if I may, I think you're right about that. I 100% think you're right, and it gives us more versatility in this case. And like I said, I think this would be a pavilion that would be used more. It's just at some point, I think residents are going to feel like a little raw, like maybe they're not getting what they ask for, because I mean they can't see the sausage being made, and so I think that's just something we need to keep in mind.
And I think if they've been to Pullman Building Supply or Lowe's or Home Depot and saw what the price is like today, they certainly understand what we're going through at the same time. So Eileen, you're next, and then we'll go to Ann.
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on here. I'm real worried about the 300,000 gap. So that's my number one worry. My number two worry is I really wish Pat was here to kind of flesh this out for us. I'm not very comfortable, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Pat about this. That gives me a little bit of a worry. The sort of kind of to tie some of this together, I don't really hear the public clamoring for this. What we do hear the public clamoring for are park improvements in general, and sometimes very specifically improvements. And I'm wondering if it might not be, now construction prices are coming down. The prices have modified a little bit, especially on dimensional lumber. But it's still very high, and we don't know what availability is out there in terms of labor. But I'm wondering if maybe if depending upon what the calendar is in terms of using the funds, if we might hold off on this until we get some results back from our marketing consultant that we're in the process of hiring at the present time. Is that something that is and our tourism thing that we're working forward? Ann and I are going to meet tomorrow and talk about that. So maybe we should hold off until we hear from our marketing people and our tourism people and see if what they feel is there the demand for this, because we don't really know. We haven't done a marketing survey on the need for this or the desire for this out there. We're just saying, hey, wouldn't this be a great idea? But again, we don't have any marketing data as to how, I don't even know how many seats this thing would seat. If it was an enclosed pavilion, how many would it seat? Ned, do we know? Is there a need for a small to medium-sized facility? There's no, I'm gonna be the bad guy here, there's no scale on these drawings, and that, I'm not very happy about that, but we'll fight that out another day. But I just don't wanna see drawings come in front of me with no scale on them. maybe we should just hold off until we get a chance to have some more input from the Lawson Gardens Committee, and maybe hear from our tourism and marketing consultants as to where they feel, is there a need in this community for this type of facility with this money at this time? I realize that's a complicated question, but it's a lot of money.
We'll go to Ann, and then we have Dan will make comments. So Ann?
Thank you. I appreciate Eileen's thoughts about delaying to see what more input would be, but I go back to the voters voted for it. It was part of what they voted for. And I do think, I like that if we do go forward with this, that it is true to the original design and it does still represent what was put before the voters, which was a place to hold events in Lawson Gardens. And there have been lots of events that have happened in Lawson Gardens, and many people have said, gosh, it'd be nice if we could have gotten out of the weather for a minute. So I do think that this design is as true as it can be to what the voters voted for, given the changes that COVID has put upon all of us in every aspect of our lives, and this is no different. So I really like the design, and I like the adaptability of what you've done and what all the stakeholders have had input in to come to this point. I too wish, though, that Pat and Al could have some input on this. That would be my reason to delay it, but I don't want to delay if it's going to really slow up your process, Parks and Rec and Design West. And so I'm not sure how to feel about that, but I do feel like two of our larger, well, not larger, but just important people who have important input would be good to hear from. So, but overall, I like this idea, and I have talked to people who, I have heard that let's take the $700,000 and put it toward other things in the park, but I think that's exactly what Brandon was addressing was, well, we passed this bond to have a structure in Lawson Gardens, but now we're diffusing that into across all the parks, which is not a bad thing, but it isn't what they voted for. And so that's where I have a hesitation with that. Thank you.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, and I'm having some similar thoughts as to what others have said. One of my concerns is, delaying any further. We don't know what's going to happen with construction costs over the next time period, and
Yeah, we do.
we've seen this in a number of projects over the last couple of years where, these delays just the increase in cost just outpaces the delay by a factor of a magnitude, and I'm just concerned about, we're estimating at possibly $1.6 million. What if we get down the road and it's $1.8 million and we haven't identified enough funds for that? And then we're talking about further delays to come back to council and rediscuss redesign at that point. And at what point do we just make a decision on what we're going to do? But I also am concerned about the fact that Al and Pat aren't here tonight to make this decision, because we're talking about something that was voted on by the public, and we're missing two council members, and we're talking about the Parks and Rec Committee. I think it was in the material somewhere where at one of the recent meetings, we didn't have a quorum. We got feedback from the members that were present, but when we're talking about modifying a bond, I think we need to be very, have a clear voice of what the council is saying, the full council. And so I'm kind of leaning towards maybe delaying a little bit until we can have a little bit more opportunity for the public to weigh in on this if they want to contact us with comments, because with these types of big decisions, when we've seen this with the city hall improvements a number of times, where something gets on the council agenda and then people are upset because they didn't hear about it, or they didn't know about it, or they weren't told about it, or whatever the reason may be. They didn't know about it, that it was going to be at that meeting, but they were very concerned about it. And then after the fact, after we've made a decision on what we're going to do, then we hear a lot of criticism and complaints about it. So I think, taking a little bit of a delay, but at the same time, we can't delay very much, because we're talking about getting in that kind of narrow time frame as well. So I'm concerned about all of those things. So that's, I mean, that's where I'm at right now.
The next council meeting that we have scheduled, September 14th or something?
Yes.
Yeah. Could this possibly be on that agenda?
Yeah, there's capacity for that, but from my standpoint, does the rest of council expect to be there? Because if other people are missing on the 14th, I'm really concerned about that part of it
Okay.
too. So if we plan to have a full council on the 14th, I absolutely can fit on there. And I think it's going to put Design West at a, they're going to have to race to, because what we're trying to do is take advantage of the best time of the year to get a bid that would help us financially. If we go out longer, then, we can always go back to bid next summer, knowing that we've given up a percentage by not doing it in the winter. So those are the choices that we're facing right now.
Laura, and then go to Eileen.
So council, I pulled up the tax certificate for the bonds. Your final spend down date, you have to have 100% of the bond proceeds spent by October 17th of 2023.
2023, is it?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Eileen?
And yes, if we choose to roll this over to the 14th, I would like some specifics as to the other funding sources that might be available, because that's $300,000 plus still hanging out there that we're going to need to come up with from somewhere. So if Mike could have something available for us at that time, something.
Should I try to take it a step further too and try to fill the gap on the original bid to the 2.7? Because we have 1.3, that means I'd like to be able to come complete to a full discussion as the original bid, because that's basically double what we have right now. I'm going to do the work. I want to make sure I'm bringing you a complete item.
Okay. So do I hear, Nathan?
And I have a question. Go ahead.
Well, the question that I had for Laura is, when do we need to spend it by? And so I would say if you want to bring that extra, I don't see that we can justify that coming out of COVID, but having the information, I think, would be beneficial. The other thing I will say is, Alan, your description actually got me a little bit more excited about the open design. So I will say that. And if we decide to go forward with an open design, being able to communicate effectively why, out on social media, exactly why we made the decision, or the benefits of the open decision, I think is going to be really important, because that bond measure got into some really challenging questions and was a little controversial at the time. And so we need to really have our communication up and going for the entire public. And I will say, even if we don't have everybody, I would at least like Pat, because Pat, this was a major thing for her, as I recall, and her input would be so valuable. So I would also suggest delaying, as has already been discussed.
Okay. Ann?
May I ask a question? I believe it'll be of Ned, and Mike alluded to it about the delay. When do you what is your deadline as far as putting out I don't know, is there I just want to know if you're
going to
just
be producing the work,
like
so.
pulling your hair out right now, or thinking, okay, I can work with that.
2 weeks is not an issue.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
And I do think it is a decision that is worth that time to make it. And I want to make sure that Eileen gets a floor plan with a scale on it, so.
Okay, as long
but
as you're good with because I didn't,
I think 2 weeks is reasonable, and especially considering that Pat and Al are not sitting in the council right now. I think the 14th is a great time for you to be able to make a decision. It won't have an overall impact on the schedule. The 28th would be I would start being a lot more nervous.
Okay.
I would be pulling the hair out.
Okay.
But I think the 14th is great.
All right, thank you.
Okay, then do I hear then basically, do you want to do a motion to table, or do you just basically want to say, well, let's delay it till the 14th?
Delay.
Just delay.
Delay.
Motion to
Sense
delay.
of the body. Let's just do a sense of the
That
body.
that takes care of it then.
So-
All right.
Thank you, council. We'll be back on the 14th with a complete package.
Is there any other new business to come before the council tonight? Seeing none, then do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And right at 9 o'clock.
Good for us.